Tolu Ogunlesi is optimistic the situation with Twitter will soon be resolved. You are part of a team that is working. You're part of a technical team Nigeria set up to negotiate with Twitter. Are you any closer to finding a resolution to this issue?
Absolutely. It is. We are indeed very close to a resolution. And you know, one thing I must say is, you know, you typically want, you know, the media seems sort of to often want to paint a picture of some sort of adversarial negotiation or a contest of sorts. But it's been a very amicable, very peaceful, very amicable and positive conversation. I think both sides have benefited from listening to each other and sharing their views. And I think we're indeed very close. Again, in the Independence Day speech of the president on the 1st of October, I mean, he did actually say that he's approved the lifting of the ban, of the suspension. You know, as long as the committees he set up, the ministerial committee, is happy that the conditions that have been outlined have been fulfilled by Twitter. So we are very close. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
So that's, you can't say it's not adversarial when you have banned a social network for 4 months and counting. When President Buhari, in that Independence Day you speak about, gave conditions that will not be fulfilled tomorrow. These are conditions that will take time to incorporate in Nigeria, to pay taxes, and all those to be under Nigerian law. These will not happen next week.
No, absolutely. I mean, the conditions are not, I mean, they are sort of, you might look at them from the point of view of short term, medium term, long term. But so, for in the example with taxation, you know, the condition is not that you must start paying taxes. The condition is that you must commit or have commit to having a conversation, you know, with the tax authorities about paying taxes. So it's not, you know, so it's not an insistence on paying taxes starting today. It's more the condition is about a commitment. It's about commitments. It's about timelines. So the commitments and timelines are very important to the conversation. Yeah.
Let's go back to the beginning. Was Twitter suspended in Nigeria because it deleted a tweet by President Buhari?
You know, so it was. The context is a lot bigger than that. But of course, from a media point of view, you find that, you know, usually, and this is not just in Nigeria, there's often an event or something that happens that kind of triggers something else. But you know, the context
tends to be a
larger one.
Tolu, the trigger for the suspension was because Twitter deleted a tweet by President Buhari which violated its terms of service.
Well, so that's very debatable. I do not that tweet was not. I do not believe that tweet violated the terms of service of Twitter, and it's of course it leads us to the question of how does local content and local context. How is
in
Twitter
fact, you bring up context, which is important, because as a Nigerian and anybody who's followed the context understands that when you talk about people who misbehave will be treated in the language they understand, that is an incitement to violence in their plain meaning. That's why Twitter took down that tweet, because it was seen as inciting people to violence.
No, absolutely not. The president spoke in his capacity as the president of Nigeria, and it was a law enforcement message. It is a law. I believe it's perfectly valid for the president of Nigeria to speak and to say that people who are, and there was a that's why I talk about context. It was contextual. It was specific. It was not a message to law-abiding Nigerians. It was a message to people who have chosen to inflict violence on other Nigerians.
Don't you think it's a contradiction for President Buhari to be reaching out to big tech, meeting with Mark Zuckerberg like he did in 2016, trying to make Nigeria an attractive destination for tech investment, and at the same time banning a company at the first sign of doing something that he does not like?
Well, you know, the Nigerian government is definitely keen on welcoming technology investment, and we have you know, welcomed and continue to see quite a lot of technology investment. So it's two sides of a coin. You know, we welcome technology investment. The other side of the coin, of course, is that technology companies also have a duty. So the government has a duty to welcome investment, to promote investment, you know, and to make an enabling environment. But tech companies as well also have a duty to ensure that their platforms are not used in ways that undermine democracy undermine peace, undermine security, undermine law enforcement. I think that there's a place in which you can have these two ideals coexist side by side, and one does not necessarily need to overshadow or obscure the other.
So somebody who tweets mostly President Buhari's praises, do you support the Twitter ban?
Well, so I'm not, the government of Nigeria has made a decision, like all governments
So
are
that's not a
expected
yes,
to.
sir. That's
And
not a
for
yes,
me,
sir.
it's not.
Do you support the Twitter ban?
And for me, no. So it's not. I'm not sure that's the question that you should be asking me. I think it's a win-win actually for Twitter and the government of Nigeria. That's certainly the view I get out of the from the negotiations. That's a win-win for both parties. I'm happy about that.
All right, Tolu, I have to leave it there. I'm not sure it's a win-win when a lot of people just go use virtual private networks and bypass the ban. So I'm not sure how much of a win-win that is, but we're going to have to leave it there. Tolu Ogunlesi, Special Assistant to the President of Nigeria on Digital and New Media. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you.